Hello and welcome everyone to our presentation today, where we are continuing with the series in the build-up to the metabolic reboot. And today we're just going to be looking at this whole thing of boosting fat metabolism and energy, and the relationship between the two, and just how important certain things are when it comes to actually trying to remove fat and weight and in the long term, so that it becomes sustainable and it becomes part of your lifestyle. And it's also, as I say, part of the whole cellular metabolism. And we'll explain that. And right at the end, again, we will put it together so that you can actually see how it actually works. And this is an overview. Obviously, when we go through the whole program, we'll go into a lot more detail and application, but I'm going to give you applications so that it's more easy to understand and know how it actually works. So boosting fat metabolism and energy, we're looking at this whole metabolic reboot 90-day workshop. And today the focus is going to be on these things of thermogenesis, how important hydration is, and cellular energy release when it comes to actually the process of moving fat. And very often we find people get to a point where they lose a certain amount of weight and they plateau. And a lot of the things we'll speak about today and that we'll go through in the whole reboot process will actually help you understand and show you how to do that in a realistic manner. And then we're actually going to look at 3 different products in the NeoLife range. We're going to look at the NeoLife T and how it can aid the whole situation, Amitone, and then also Treonine is a pretty important one, and the other one, we can bring in also has to do with the a number of the different vitamins and so on that we have. But we'll explain that as we go through the whole process. So let's then get into it and look at what we'll cover today. We're going to look at what thermogenesis is and why it matters when it comes to fat loss and why it's so important. We look at the other process in the fat loss process is cellular energy release, and how fat actually leaves the cell, and important to understand how that process takes place. And then we look at the natural energy versus caffeine spikes, and something, again, caffeine, let's mention it here, but basically with caffeine it affects the whole insulin cortisol balances. So excess caffeine is also not a good thing, but we'll go into detail on that when we go into the reboot. And then we look at the nighttime muscle support with Amitone and how Amitone works and its application. Then also hydration, and really how important hydration is to the whole process. I also want to just give you a quick note on mitochondrial health, because that goes back to the whole thing of the cellular energy release, where Treonine and so on comes in, and I'll explain that as we get to those slides. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this metabolic ecosystem and bringing this whole lot together, the thermogenesis, the cellular energy release and fat loss, as well as the hydration, and just how that works together. So what is thermogenesis and why is it so important? Thermogenesis really refers to heat production in the body, and it happens in 3 main ways. We get the basal thermogenesis, where calories are burned just to stay alive, and what our body does to keep us moving and keep all the organs, etc., going. Then you get a diet-induced thermogenesis, where this is the energy used to digest food, and protein is the highest here. And this also is where it becomes so important how you eat and what you eat, because the more protein you have in your diet and the more things that is harder and your body's got to work harder to digest, the increased thermogenesis. And in the app that I in fact use, I've included thermogenesis, where most apps really look at calories. We include the thermogenesis and the effect of thermogenics because that has an impact on the weight that you will actually lose at the end of the day. And then we look at adaptive or activity when it comes to thermogenesis, and that's extra heat from movement, and where obviously things like exercise and just moving comes in, and other thermogenic compounds that we might take in. So when thermogenesis goes up, you end up burning more calories and than you do at rest, and there is greater fat loss. And that's why we have learnt and understand it's not a process of calories in, calories out. There are lots of other factors which play a part in weight management. And why thermogenesis actually matters for weight managers is because it increases the daily calorie usage or expenditure without extreme restriction. So you get to a point where you can eat a fair amount, but as long as you're doing the right things with what you're eating, with your exercise, with your sleep, with the other things that contribute to this, you in fact very often you'll see you can actually eat more calories, and yet you will still lose or retain the weight to where you need it to be. Effectively, it encourages the body to use stored fat as fuel, and we'll explain that a little bit more when we get to the whole thing of the cellular removal a little bit later on. It also supports metabolic rate, and this is obviously very important because metabolic rate plays a big part in terms of how you burn and get rid of fat and use the calories, etc. And what this does, the thermogenesis helps prevent the whole slowdown of it. And that's the thing of calories in, calories out. You get to a point where you start starving your body of calories, and what your body does then is it says, okay, we're moving into an unhealthy situation here, so let's slow the metabolic rate down. And that's why those kind of diets very often don't work, or you can plateau with them and they won't work further, because that's exactly what your body responds like that to as a self-preservation activity. What this happens also is that it creates cleaner and more sustainable energy when we deal with and how we get thermogenesis to have the impact in our body. So now if we look at the cellular energy release, and this we call very much the missing link, which most people don't very often consider, and this happens inside the cell, not just in the blood. The process is basically the stored fat that we have is, in terms of triglycerides, is broken down. So you get this lipolysis, it breaks down the fats, and then those free fatty acids go into the mitochondria, and they are then burned through a beta oxidation process to create our ATP and our energy, obviously energy and heat. And where I said tree and N will obviously come in is you must consider from this perspective healthy mitochondria and healthy cell function, in what we take into the cell, what we get out of the cell. Treonine is a product that's actually really, really important for that and supports that. So it's in that way it can also support this, and that's why we emphasize in this whole situation the combination of Neolife T, Amitone, your blood sugar balancing meals, sleep, stress tools, and to manage the stress really at the end of the day. And that's really dealing with the cortisol and keeping that within check, and movement and hydration. So the exercise that we need to be doing, some kind of exercise, you don't have to do real exertional sort of stuff. You need to be moving, and you need to be trying to get your heart rate up. And then of course hydration is really, really important in terms of ensuring that the weight loss actually happens, and that it's maintained, because it's vital for your the rest of your body and the functioning of your body. And then if we look at this natural energy versus caffeine spikes, and typical caffeine drinks, what they do is they cause a sharp spike in and of course when you get a spike, for instance, in your cortisol, your insulin comes in, and so in order to bring the sugar down, so you end up getting this, not only this crash, but you also, with a chronic stress situation, or you get constant or chronic cortisol production, and that also continues to cause a problem, and the fat deposition at the end of the day, which goes along with that because of the interplay between insulin and cortisol. So Neolife tea, which is composed basically of these green tea catechins and other botanical adaptogens, which we've spoken about previously as well, and it gently helps increase the thermogenesis, and that's where its role comes in terms of the thermogenesis, and also something you can use to avoid the caffeine spikes as well, in place of other normal teas, black teas and so on, which will very often have a fairly high component of caffeine in them. It provides a calm, sustained energy, and these things are ideal for replacement of your coffee in the afternoon, and particularly later in the day. But it can be obviously used throughout the day, but a great replacement later in the day. And it also helps support fat oxidation without the jitters, because the caffeine is what will bring the jitters. High caffeine levels, you take a real caffeine hit and you'll see you will get the jitters from that. And then we look at the nighttime muscle support, where just an indication of where amitone can come in and can assist in terms of helping lose that extra bit of weight, and also maintaining lean muscle mass. And lean muscle mass is one of the things that give you a good indication of your overall health and your longevity as well. That's what keeps you strong when as you age and get older. And it's critical for fat mobilization and recovery overnight. And this is obviously where sleep also comes in, which is really important. But amitone is something that contains amino acid complex, which effectively supports muscle protein synthesis while you sleep. And obviously, if you're getting synthesis of proteins while you sleep, you're building muscle mass rather than having fat deposition. It helps protect the lean muscle mass at the end of the day, and that's where it becomes very helpful in terms of weight management. It also helps regulate the hormones that control your hunger. So it can be a very valuable additional product which can be used in certain circumstances. You don't always have to use it, but just to recognize how it fits in and how it can actually help. And the result is that you'll get better body composition and a stronger metabolism using something like this. And you must remember, it helps with the protein as well. So, that's where thermogenesis also kicks in. Then when we look at our hydration protocol, and water is essential for every metabolic reaction in our body, including fat breakdown and thermogenesis. And we should on a daily basis target to drink somewhere in the region of 2.5 to 3 liters. And I personally very often find it difficult to do that, but literally I have to do that by either putting my water bottles ready through the day. I focus conscious effort on drinking like 500 mils in the morning when I get up, even before I have my coffee or anything else. And I will have a cup of coffee in the morning, that's fine, but I will try and drink my water first, and I will also endeavor to get that 2.5. And in the app that I have as well, I actually give you, there's a tool that you can use to help yourself get to that where you need to. And like I say, 500 mils first thing in the morning, and a glass. Very often it's said a glass before every meal, and I'd suggest if you do that, drink the glass of water fairly well before your meal, because you must also take into account that water and other fluids dilute the acid that's going to be used to break down the protein. So it will slow it to an extent. There are a couple of other hacks that we can show you when we go through the metabolic reboot, which will help you even turbo boost the weight loss a little bit further. There's a couple of hacks that you can use around and before and after meals as well, which actually help. Neolife tea also counts towards your daily total of fluid intake, so that can be counted. The thing is, when you're getting to coffees and normal teas, those things we generally don't count. You're taking in the liquid, but you're getting the caffeine, which is interacting negatively with your cortisol insulin synchronization. Even slow, or rather mild, dehydration slows your fat metabolism down and also slows down the energy production. So it's a vital part of your nutrition. And something you need to take into account and pay attention to. I think it's really important. So I said I'd speak a little bit about the mitochondrial health and the benefits, because healthy mitochondria mean better fat burning and energy production. And you'll obviously, if you've got better energy production, you're feeling a whole lot more alive, you want to be doing stuff, you're going to be exercising or walking or running more. So, you know, it's imperative that we look after our mitochondrial health. And as we get older, that's one of the big things that suffer. Hence, we get to the point where we don't have any energy, we don't want to be doing things. It's really important to keep your mitochondria healthy. And they are the powerhouses that where your cells and where fat is actually burned. Also, what gives you your body's ability to function. Because if you don't have any energy, you don't, if you're not producing energy through the ATP process and so on, and from your mitochondria, you're not going to, your body is going to basically just stop working. So supporting mitochondrial health leads to improved oxidation, so better use of stored fat for fuel. And fat for fuel is in actual fact, per calorie, it's a better and stronger source than carbohydrate, believe it or not. High energy production, so you'll get more ATP produced with healthy mitochondria, and it also enhances the whole thermogenic or thermogenesis process. And that means you'll have better metabolic function and flexibility. It reduces the oxidative stress and cellular fatigue, and those things are important when it comes to, you know, keeping yourself aging well. So really important to think about that. It also gives you greater resilience and recovery. If you've got more energy, you're going to do a whole lot better. So the thermogenic compounds that you find in Your Life Tea, proper amino acid support that you can get in the amitone, good hydration, quality sleep, all contribute to much stronger mitochondrial function, which makes then fat loss, you know, more efficient, and also your energy levels more stable. So a really important part of this whole process of weight management, you know, and to realize here again, as I say, TNN, great product, which in fact helps with that. And when you're coming to looking at, you know, a good balance thing is obviously the Pro Vitality as well as another product that you can in actual fact promote when it comes to weight management and general healthy system. So if we now look at the metabolic ecosystem, fat metabolism isn't just about the food. We need to create an environment in which your body can efficiently produce and then use the energy. Okay, so you can ensure that you have proper weight loss and sustained weight loss, that you can maintain that situation. So, you know, we talk very much about the blood sugar balancing diet. You have a balanced diet. We're balancing your blood sugar so that you're avoiding the spikes, the dips and the spikes of your insulin and the cortisone, because that's not only what causes the damage, but it's also what causes a lot of the fat deposition. And normally that fat that is, you know, unhealthy fat that's generally deposited around your organs, and also where you get an indication of that. And we talk about the pre-diabetes and diabetic, we measure waist circumference, because that gives us a really good indication of your metabolic health at the end of the day, more so than a lot of other things before we start doing blood work and all those other kind of things. So with a blood sugar balancing diet, we need to make sure that we're having a nutrient dense diet. We were providing raw materials for the cellular energy. And I always say with any of your nutrition, if we can go to think raw food or raw, you know, raw ingredients that you're putting in, not a lot of the refined stuff, which we're finding a box which has a lot of labels. Rather go for stuff where you've got a label which tells you what the food is that you're eating. There aren't all sorts of other things added, and you know that's a really important part as well for your long-term health. And then we look at the cellular nutrition, nutrients which you know, obviously ensure that your mitochondria are healthy, which produces the ATP and your energy, and that supports the cellular machinery that produces the energy that you need for life. And then we look at the thermogenesis, things like movement, and then food and thermic effect. And that comes from, as I've indicated to start off with, it comes from the protein, the fiber, and fats. Those things increase the thermic effect. Carbohydrates, if you're using good carbohydrates, what we call the healthy carbs, low GI, it also assists that. But when you start using higher refined carbs and synthetic stuff, those things just go through your body. There's no time that your body needs to in fact digest it, and you don't get that activity of the digestion, which has a huge thermic effect on your food, and thus ensuring that you actually break down the fat and so on in your body. And it also, this whole thermogenesis and the way you digest your food and so on increases the energy expenditure, which is what helps with that whole fat loss and weight maintenance. Why then also we look at quality sleep, and why is that so important? Your sleep is so important from a recovery perspective, where you can get your hormonal and metabolic regulation back in sync. That's what happens overnight with there's certain hormones which go down, others which go up, and your body uses that whole overnight process to detox and clean out your stomach, get you ready for the new day. So quality sleep is absolutely vital. It is not a negotiable, it's absolutely vital. It protects your energy and your appetite and your recovery, your ability also to recover. Exercise is another thing which is important, the muscle and the movement, and that increases energy demands, and that obviously then supports your metabolism and using up the materials which could otherwise be deposited into different parts of your body, causing the fat to stay and the fat to be deposited, and obviously to increase your weight gain. Then we look at stress and mindfulness, and I as a mindfulness coach as well, work a fair amount on that, because the thing I find with literally every person that I coach and speak to, stress will come up somewhere. It is a stress and sleep, two of the big things that come up, aside obviously from the nutrition, but stress is a big thing. And stress, because we live so much of our lives under this chronic stress situation, we have a situation where our cortisol levels are consistently high. That then messes not only with the insulin but with other hormones as well, and that's what causes very often the deposition of all this fat in visceral fat and fat in areas around our organs and around our waist, which is very unhealthy. Aside from us just having an overweight situation, those things deposit even in thin people. Very often you find that is a huge problem, where a lot of them, they look to be fit, etc., but what's going on in the inside? And this has a lot to do with that, and why stress is such a huge factor in our health. We need to lower chronic stress and have a better eating awareness. And something we also do very often is we try and make you more mindful of what it is you're eating, what it is you're doing, and all those little influences on not only your weight and so on, but also on your overall general health. And it helps us support sustainable metabolic behaviors, so that you're in a position to then lose the weight, be conscious of how you can keep it off and sustain it. Because the really important thing is this is a life-changing thing at the end of the day. You want to get to a point where this is what you do, this is the default, and you move to this so that you're not having just another diet. What we're looking at is lifestyle and lifestyle change at the end of the day. And the goal really isn't just to burn fat faster. The goal is to create a body that is better equipped to use the energy efficiently, and so better equipped to have a healthier metabolic system. That's metabolic metabolism, and the metabolic process in our bodies is really what it's all about at the end of the day. It affects our weight, it affects our clarity of thinking, it affects our long-term health, it affects everything that we do. In terms of that as well, just looking at having the healthy metabolism, you avoid a lot of the most diseases are in fact related to that in one way or another, because the high carb levels, the unhealthy metabolic process in our body predispose us to all the other things that come along. And so you're seeing all of the other outcomes which are as a result of a poor metabolic process in your body. So let's make it practical in your daily metabolic reset. Let's start with nutrition. Blood sugar balancing diets, what we'll work with. We build meals around quality protein, non-starchy vegetables, healthy fats, good carbohydrates, and feed the system correctly. Then we look at the hydration, and that's, there's 2.5 to 3 liters of water per day, water throughout the day, and start early in the morning. Use it sometimes before the meal. Use the Neolife tea, which helps with the thermogenesis. And it's a practical thing which we need to get into a regular habit of doing that, because it's absolutely vital for all the different bodily functions that we have. And then create a thermogenic moment. So be aware of what you're eating to help promote the thermogenesis. Neolife tea in the mid-afternoon, the tea for the thermogenic support, so that you've got steady energy. We need the movement there. And also, as I say, as far as the food that we're eating, if we're having snacks, make sure that your snacks, always you say, you don't ever have a bare carb. You always have a protein with it. So if you want a snack, make sure there's some kind of protein there, because that slows it down, makes your body have to work, increases the thermogenic effect, and you will lose the weight. Whereas you're just having the plain carbs, you're going to generally pick up weight with time. Move, and again, I say move is the important thing. Just some kind of exercise. You don't have to do huge stuff. Resistance training, HIIT training as well. And those things can be done without being excessive. HIIT training can be done very simply without having to go and do, serious exercise. So it is all possible. It's all within reach, and we make it practical to each person. So then we also need to look at resetting our stress, and we can use things, and we do use things like this, is that, regular things like meditation, use routines if you don't particularly want to do meditation, slow breathing, walking outdoors in nature. There are lots of ways that we can help to drive the stress down, and I work with giving you those things in the stress program to deal with that. And then recover, and that comes with your sleep, not only just with your giving your body rest and resting when you're exercising, etc. We can use fasting situations and so on. And all those will be practical things that we'll talk about. But recover, prioritize quality sleep. Sleep is when your body recovers. It repairs everything. It regulates all those hormones and other things, clears out the system, gets the stomach ready, helps with your gut microbiome as well if you do things properly. So think here when we look at recovery. Recovery is part of a metabolic program. It's not time away from it. It's actually part of the process and becomes intertwined with the whole thing. So the bottom line, if we look at it with the overall thing, blood sugar balancing and nutrition, which is vital, hydration, we need to look at movement, which aids the thermogenesis together with the various other parts of the thermogenic pillar that we spoke about in terms of how you eat, etc., using a Neolife tea, using the proteins correctly. And then looking at the cellular energy in our body to encourage the fat to move out of the cell and to actually get rid of it so it doesn't end up being deposited in the wrong parts of the body, vital parts of it, and the mitochondria, as we spoke about, how important that is. And then sleep recovery. Sleep is again, getting that sufficient daily, regular, routine sleep is what's important. And we talk about in the process as well in the reset about the circadian rhythm, how it works, where it fits in, just to be in, to understand that a whole lot better. And then also we need to lower our stress and become a bit more, or not a bit more, a whole lot more mindful of what we're doing, because that's really important. You've got to decide at the end of the day what is important to you. Is your health that important to you? Do you want to remain healthy through to your older life and to live in live a lot more comfortably, live longer, but live healthier? Don't just live longer and live in pain and disease and so on. Really, really important to have this whole combination. And that's why I say we look at it from a holistic perspective, and we help you get to that. So the products is obviously that I spoke about is the Ametone. Looking at the Neolife, I've spoken about Trianin, and those are the main products that we've spoken about. And the other one that we didn't mention a lot along the way, but it's Botanical Balance, and Botanical Balance can help with that whole blood sugar balancing situation. It's something that can aid that. You can do a lot of that with what you eat, but the Botanical Balance is also a brilliant product to use alongside with all of that as well. So thank you very much for taking the time again to join us, and I hope that it's been useful and encouraged you to, consider getting onto the metabolic reset, and also to understanding a little bit more about how this whole lot works together to make you a much healthier person in the long run. So thank you again for joining us, and please, any questions, please ask them through Monica at the moment, and I'm happy to take questions if it goes onto the group. Please feel free to ask the questions, and I can help where I can. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend further.